Let's talk acrylics. This video is not sponsored by any of the companies mentioned. Shannon O. Jackson here, also known as Caution Artist at Play, because on this channel, I play with all different kinds of art supplies. And that prompted me to do kind of an art supply tour series on this channel, where I'm showing you all the different supplies that I use by medium. And let me tell you, it's been a lot. I have shown you the colored pencils and the pastels and graphite and markers, I believe. And now we're going to be working our way around the room into the paint section. And we're going to start off with acrylics. I've been working with acrylics for over 20 years now, so I have a bunch of different kinds. This one's going to be another long one, folks. So if you stick around, you're one of my true pals. I'm just saying. Gonna be a long one. So let's just jump into it. Let's take a quick look at how I store my acrylic paints. You've probably seen this in the background. I have an acrylic shelf here for my acrylic inks. I keep those out at all times for airbrushing. Then I have this large husky tool chest that I keep the rest of my paints in, and probably the fullest drawer in here is the one where I keep my acrylics. As you can tell, there is a lot in here. I have them sorted in baskets by kind of like a color grouping so that I can just reach in for the colors that I need. Let's jump right into it. I think I'm going to start with the thinner acrylics, like my acrylic inks and fluid acrylics, and then work my way up to the thick stuff, you know, heavy body acrylics. I'm not going to show you every single color I have in every single line, but I will kind of show you an example of the different brands I have. So jumping into it, we're going to start with acrylic inks. I have a few different brands of acrylic inks here. And so let's start off with the fun ones that come in these neat little dropper bottles. I have here the Daler-Rowney FW inks. These tend to be their more transparent line of acrylic inks. I have quite a few colors of these. It's not an expansive line, but I've been playing around with these a little bit more lately. I also have some of their pearlescent. And then I have just a few of the Daler-Rowney System 3 acrylic inks, and these tend to be more opaque. So I liken these to like a really thin acrylic paint. These feel more inky to me because they're more transparent. They're just fun and bold. I tend to like the transparent ones a little bit more. That's why I have more of those. And then I just have a few of these. Now, these are good for things like dip pens. They can be used in airbrushes. And they're fun to just create some like abstract work with, like you would with an alcohol ink. I have some palette paper here. And I can just show you an example of how they look. So this is the System 3. That's gunky. I don't know if that just wasn't shaken up enough. But as you can tell already, it's pretty opaque. I think I just didn't shake that one up enough. But basically, we have these droppers, and this is just kind of an example. It usually comes out more like this. You can use the dropper or a brush. And then the FW feels a bit more like what you would expect from an ink. At least to me. They're very thin, but they tend to be more transparent when you spread them out. So that's just kind of a look at that. I may not be doing this with all the acrylics I have. I don't have a lot of time, but just so that you can kind of see like the differences. Like when that spreads out on the palette, it's a little bit more transparent. And then, so that's kind of what those look like. I have some other brands of acrylic inks as well. I have some of the Liquitex acrylic inks. Very similar to those. I think that there's definitely a range here between opaque and transparent within this line. Like this one clearly looks a lot more transparent, but obviously the white's going to be more opaque. And these are transparent colors. They have it right on the side to show the opacity. This one's obviously more opaque. And so these do tend to be transparent overall, other than this white one. So there's those. I also have some acrylic inks by Holbein. These are a lot of fun. These are great for things like airbrushing and fine detail. One thing that I love about acrylic ink, obviously, as I've mentioned, airbrushing, but the fine detail you can get. I love me a good acrylic ink when I am trying to do a fine line in acrylic, because you don't have to thin it down. It's already thinned down for you. You put it on a liner brush and you can get those details that you need. And the way they do theirs is they have the opacity rating on the side. So it depends on what pigments that they're using that's going to determine the amount of opacity. So you just look at the scale, and it also has their light fast ratings on the side. And I should mention, the System 3 acrylics also have light fast ratings on them, as does the Liquitex. I tend to try to work with pretty light fast colors when I'm working with acrylics. But yes, I have just started recently using these in, just like recent years, and I love them. They're beautiful. They're very, very vibrant. So this is probably the newest brand to me. I had worked with other Holbein stuff in the past, but just recent years I started using those. Now, something that I do use a lot of are the golden high flow acrylics. Now, these are maybe a little thicker than an ink, but I really think these are pretty much an acrylic ink, even though they're not called that. They call them the high flow. And I have a ton of these because when I first started airbrushing, these were the first thing that I tried that were artist quality that didn't clog the airbrush, of course, before I got the Holbein acrylic inks. Also, I want to mention, I have shown you my acrylic markers already. I think I showed those to you when I did my marker video, but these are fantastic in the refillable markers by Holbein. And I have done some work with those as well. You just fill it up with the acrylic ink. And I like using that for outlines and stuff like that. I think these are actually a little bit thinner than these. So they work great in an airbrush, work great in a pen. And then I just had invested in these a lot before I had tried the Holbein ones. And now I'm starting to use them in conjunction with one another. So I have a ton of colors of these. I use these, again, when I'm working with my airbrush, when I'm doing fine lining, when I just want thin colors that can actually get a lot of coverage. I am somebody who I like to work in layers a lot. So I am somebody who uses thin to medium bodied acrylics most in my work. So that's what I have the most of, is the thin to medium bodied acrylics. So I have more of these, I think, than I do any of the other acrylic inks or thin acrylics. Okay, so working our way up in thickness, we are starting to move into what is known as the fluid acrylics. So the, not to be confused with the high flow, we also have the golden fluid acrylics. So these are just a bit thicker than these. So they're still a very thin acrylic. You can water them down, put them in an airbrush, and you can still get some of that fine detail, but you're starting to see a little bit more of your brush stroke now. So like, let's see, let's use one of these. This is our high flow. Is this open? I don't even know if that one's open. Hang on. This one's open. See how that comes out? Very similar to that acrylic ink. And heck, let's just throw a Holbein on there while we're at it. This is what the Holbein looks like when it comes out. So, very ink-like. And then we have the fluid acrylic, which is a little bit more viscousy. You can see it's thicker on there. Not by much. You're still going to be able to get that fine detail without having to water it down too much. But you can definitely see this is a little bit more watery than this. I don't have a ton of these because I just invested in more of the inks than I did of these. But I do have some golden colors. Apparently 2 of the alizarin crimson hue. Apparently I'm a fan of that color. And some phthalo blue, some Prussian blue hue. I think I got these while they were on sale one time at Michael's or something, so I just picked up a few colors here and there. I haven't really bought a lot. And then a white, because you need to have a white acrylic in every kind of acrylic you own. That is my motto, folks. I'm just kidding. You can never have enough white paint, so a lot of times I do have a white in every acrylic that I own. And then they also have this fun iridescent. I have the bronze one. I don't think I have any of the other iridescent colors. I think I do have a couple more of these colors. I know I have their green gold. I don't have them all out. Again, ain't nobody got time for that. We don't have time to sit here to show you every single color I have in every line. But I will say I have less of these than I do the high flow acrylics. And then I also have a few of the Holbein fluid acrylic. And again, I like the fluid, but I tend to ear more towards the inks. So when I have invested in more colors, I have tended to go more towards the inks. But these are beautiful as well. And again, you're going to have that kind of just slightly thicker texture than their ink. Again, this blob there is their acrylic ink. See how much slower that comes out? And you're going to have a little bit more brush stroke, not a ton, but you're going to get more texture with this, and it stays put a little bit better than the ink. As far as, like, if I were to, like, do this, you see how the inks are going faster and flowing as opposed to the fluid. So the fluid stays put a little bit better. So if you want a little bit more of that thickness, viscosity, you're going to want to go for the fluid, but you can still get some good layering, thin layers with those. Some other fluid acrylics that I just got recently, these are the System 3 fluid acrylics. Now, a little background from me, when I first started with acrylic, and you'll see, I have a lot of the System 3 acrylics. I am somebody who, that was one of the first more professional grade acrylics that I started working with when I was probably like 18, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But they recently came out with their own fluid line. And you can see they have like these little squirt bottles. A little bit thicker than an ink, but you can get some really neat control with these bottles. And I actually got these on promotion from, I think it was Blick. I think I had been buying some other acrylics from System 3. Actually, I think it was when I was buying more of the FW, because I started playing around with the FW and I'm like, man, these are pretty. I want more. And I bought a bunch of these, and I think they had a promotion that if you spent a certain amount of money on the Daler-Rowney products, you got a set of these for free or something like that. And so that's how I ended up with these. And I find them to be pretty intriguing. I haven't had the chance to play around with them very much, but again, these are very similar in texture to the golden fluid acrylics. A little thicker than your inks, but not so thick that you're not able to get those thin layers or those details easily. And again, these will have the opacity information and the light fast information. Everything that I've shown you so far has light fast information on it. And then I have one soft body acrylic by Liquitex. So this is a little, I think this is thicker than that. This is like, you're starting to get into medium body paint now, but it has this squirt tube thing. So this is, I think, a little bit thicker than our fluid acrylics. Look at that. Oh, dollop will do ya. So now we're starting to get into our medium bodied paints. And this is where I tend to be most of the time, though I'm starting to get more towards the thinner now. I'm somebody who, as you know, I do a lot of realism, so I don't tend to need to have my brush strokes be evident. But if you're somebody who does want to have that impasto look, you're going to want to start to get into the thicker paints. So let's take a closer look at my medium body paints that I have. Okay, so these bad boys, these are the ones that I was just talking about. These are the medium body from the System 3 line. Now, I don't want these to be confused with the, what is it, the Studio Paint or the Graduate. I think it might be their Graduate line from Daler-Rowney. These are higher quality than that. They do have a bunch of different student grades out there. This is more akin to like a Liquitex Basics. They're in the same class as far as quality goes, but Daler-Rowney does have some other paints that aren't necessarily as high quality as these that I don't tend to use in my work because they don't, I don't know. They just don't tickle my fancy. You know what I mean? But these, I fell in love with acrylic paint through these. Before I used these, I was using my apple barrel paints. And I got these as a gift from a coworker when I was like 18 years old. So I've been using these since I was a teenager. So I probably have more of these than any other paint besides maybe golden. I might have more golden now, but these are still a go-to for me, and they come in various sizes. Again, a medium body paint. This isn't their highest quality paint. I think their highest quality is probably their heavy body, but this is right behind it. You got a good thickness there. You can get brush stroke if you need it, but you can also thin it down. And they're vibrant, and they have the light fast ratings and all that information. And again, you can get them in different sizes. And I love them. It's one of those things that I've been using them for so long. I've never had an issue with them. I love them so much. It's still something time and time again. Their white is my all-time favorite white as far as a medium body goes. So nice and opaque and beautiful. And so I usually have I have a big white. I have a ton of different white. I always get extra white paint. But classroom sizes, I think they even have sizes bigger than this, bigger jars possibly, but don't quote me on that. And yeah, I've had these for years, and let's just take a quick look at what a medium body paint, we'll just use this on the thickness scale. Right there, that nice dollop. So you can keep your brush strokes if you want, but you don't have to. I'm going to get so messy with this video. And then I also have some other brands that are in like the medium body category. Liquitex Basics being one of them. You can kind of see. They're feeling nice and thick right now though, because it's cool in my studio. So they're going to be wicked thick. Just coming straight out of the tube right now because I have heat up here so that I can keep them good, but this is, you know, the Liquitex Basics, very similar thickness wise. And so I use all these acrylics interchangeably. So I have probably more System 3 acrylic as far as all the medium body goes. I have more of those than I do Liquitex Basics, but I do find Liquitex Basics is often easier for me to find at like Michael's and places like that, although I know that they've been getting away from using brands other than their own Michael's brand stuff. But I do have an easier time finding these open stock sometimes. So a lot of times if I get low on a color in this, I might try and find a similar color in Liquitex Basics. But these are still my go-to. Another brand that I only have actually a couple of that are about the same thickness are the Winsor & Newton Galleria acrylics. Again, I got a couple of these colors open stock when I was in school, when I was getting low on my other medium body paints. Very similar in texture, maybe a little bit thicker. Gets the job done, not too expensive. That's the other thing about these. These are all like mid-range price. As far as these like medium body paints go, they're not very expensive. They're going to be more expensive than your student grade stuff that doesn't want to adhere to canvas, but they get the job done. They're beautiful, and they're not as expensive as, say, a heavy body paint. And something else that I want to mention, these versus heavy body, these don't tend to dry on the palette as fast, I find. When I'm working with a heavy body paint, they're drying out on my palette a lot more quickly. Even if they are glossy and beautiful and look more high quality, they're still drying out faster than these. I find these have a longer working time than any heavy body paint in almost any company other than the Golden Open or, you know. But yeah, so those are the brands that I typically have in my regular medium body paint. We're going to start moving into some more like specially themed acrylics now. Okay, so I have here, this is the medium bodied paint by Holbein that are very, very similar to the Liquitex Basics and the System 3 by Daler-Rowney. However, these are specially formulated to be matte, whereas you might have some different finishes with the Daler-Rowney System 3. The System 3 tend to be probably the shiniest of the three when they dry, and then the Liquitex Basics tend to dry a little bit more matte than the System 3. They just tend to dry a little bit more matte in general. But these would be the mattest of the three that I have. And I have a few colors here. I haven't invested in this line a whole lot because I have a ton of acrylics already. I mean, let's be real. I don't need to invest a ton in more of the medium body paints. Once I get lower on some colors, I probably will get these because these are pretty opaque and beautiful. And they're really vibrant and fun to play with. And then along the lines of having a paint that was made specifically to be matte, I also have, surprise, surprise, the Golden So Flat Matte Acrylics. I've done a video on these, and I've bought more since I've done that video. I have a ton of these colors. And again, they're opaque, they're beautiful, and they dry matte. And on the one thing that I love about Golden in general is that you always have a paint swatch on the front that's going to show you how opaque a color is and what it looks like. And you can see how matte it is compared to, let's see, like, this is much shinier of a swatch than this is. So it's pretty cool. I like a good glossy finish. Honestly, I usually use a gloss varnish, but I do think the flat matte colors definitely have their places. And especially since they typically tend to be a little bit more opaque. So they all have their place in my art. We'll just put it that way. And the So Flat Matte acrylics also have a bunch of fun colors, like this Naphthol pink. Boy, she's beautiful. And she's relatively light fast for a color that's as bright as it is. Oh, I don't have this one open yet. She is bright, and I love her for things like sunsets and stuff like that. In a place where I want something that's nearly neon, but still pretty light fast. And of course, it is Golden. They have their light fast ratings on the side. Now, along those lines of specialty paints that tend to be like more on the medium bodied side, I do have this set of 12 Shades of Grey. This came from Jerry's Artorama. And actually, you can order it through Amazon. It comes from Jerry's, but you can order it on Amazon. It had a horrible sticker here, and that really aggravated me. And look at this. It's nasty. I have animals, and so stuff gets stuck. But anyway, I did do a video on this as well, and this is just a fun set of grays. So it's a convenient set, and I did actually use this. I used some of these in my recent acrylic painting of the frog because it helped me to neutralize some of the background colors. And these are fairly opaque as well. And I had a good time with them, and you can tell it's a nice, it's got that kind of medium-bodied texture to it. And they worked pretty well. And they did come with light fast ratings. They all are between like a 3 and a 4. And again, if you want to learn more about these, I do have a video on them. I will link any videos that are related to the paints that I'm showing you. I have a video on these. I have a video on these. And I have some that are specifically reviews, and then I have some where I'm just using acrylic paint. So I'll link all that anyway. But this was a fun set. This was more of a novelty thing for me. I just wanted to try it out. They're really beautiful, really muted colors. And again, it's just a convenience thing. I can mix all these colors from the acrylics I have. But when I'm in a pinch, it's just a great way to add some neutralization. Okay. Again, we've got some Golden open acrylics. I do have a video on these on the channel. Look at this humongous white. I'm telling you, white, you'll go through the white paint more than anything else, so prepare yourself. I used these a lot when I was in school. I have more colors than this. I just grabbed a sampling from my drawer. Now, these are paints that are specifically made so that they stay open longer, which means they don't dry as fast as regular acrylic paints, especially given the thickness of these. to me, they feel more like in between a medium body and a heavy body. And they're beautiful. They dry. Some of them dry a little bit more glossy. Some of them are going to be a little bit more matte and opaque. You're going to have that range there. They do have light fast ratings, of course. And again, like all the other golden ones, they have that swatch. So you can see right on the front. If you're buying open stock, you're going to be able to see if you're going to like the looks of that color and how opaque it is. And again, it's right there. That's going to take forever to dry. And when I did the video, I showed how long it took to dry. Like I did a dry test compared to my other acrylics. So if you want to watch that review, I'm going to tell you, some of the, the videos that I'm referencing are old. Yeah, you're going to hear it in the voice and the quality. You're going to see they're older videos, but this one I don't think is as old as some of the other videos, but yeah. Anyway, but there's still some good information there, and I had fun with these. I've used them since. I use them in conjunction with my other acrylics. Again, everything you see here, I use together. I actually have a video about that as well, and I'll link that. How you can use the different acrylics together because they're just so versatile. And basically, if you mix it with a regular acrylic, it's still not going to dry as fast as a regular acrylic, but it's not going to dry as slow as an open acrylic. And Golden makes an open medium, so you can mix it with your regular acrylics and make it feel open. The only thing about these is because I have an extensive acrylic background and I work fast because of that, I'm not necessarily patient enough for these. I'm going to tell you, some of these colors, though, are beautiful for glazing. They're just so luscious. Like the golden, when you're getting into Golden's artist grade colors, they're just luscious and almost like the painting I did with these almost looks like an oil painting without much effort on my part to make it look like an oil painting. And you're going to get that with their heavy body as well. They're just beautiful. All around a great company. Clearly, I have a lot of their products. So that's the Golden Open. Now, before we get into the really, really thick, I got one more paint that's kind of in the specialty category. And that is the Natural Acrylic Paint by Natural Earth Paint. Now, these technically are not an acrylic at all. They are a plant-based paint that were made specifically to mimic an acrylic paint so that they can be safer for the environment. They're plant-based, so they're not going to be putting microplastics into your waterways, and they're healthier to work with. Again, this is like getting medium body into heavy body. We're starting to get into the heavier body now. I do feel like they're a little bit thinner than the other heavy bodies I have, but not by much. And they work really well, surprisingly well for something that's not technically acrylic. I put it in this category though, because these are made to be kind of a replacement. If you're somebody who is really trying to start to get into, you know, finding healthier alternatives for your art supplies, that's what this is made for. And they don't smell bad. One thing I will say is they dry exceedingly fast on your palette. I shouldn't say exceedingly. When you're working, it's not too much faster than your regular medium body paints. I don't even know if it's any faster than the regular heavy bodies that I have, but I can say that they will dry out in conditions that my regular acrylics don't dry out in. I have a Stay Wet palette. It's one of those Masters palette seal things. It's like a big Tupperware dish for the palette, and I have a glass palette in there, and I put my acrylics on it. I spray them down before I seal it, and I actually usually keep a wet paper towel in there to try and keep things moist. And my regular acrylic paints will last months like that. These will not. These will still dry up even with those measures taken on the palette. So I use these little by little, but again, these can be used with your regular acrylic paints. Sometimes, as I showed you how I store my paints, I store them all by color because they can typically be used all together. So sometimes I'll just grab one of these out and I'll use them with my regular acrylics with no problems, and they mix just fine. These are made to be archival. I will link them. Like, I'll link their site because they have other supplies as well. But I have a whole video on this if you want to learn more about these. they're a little bit different, but they're not supposed to be giving you those hidden fumes that regular acrylics have. And they're using natural pigments from the earth, and so they're all made to be very light fast. And I do think it is a really good move in the right direction. I love the concept of their company, and I had a good time with them. And again, I still use them. It's just, you know, you have to be careful if it gets too cold. If they freeze up, they're not going to be as durable. You shouldn't be letting your acrylic paint freeze anyways, because it can cause issues. But some of them are more durable than others. If, for instance, your power goes out and you live in Maine, like me. It's just one of those things, like they don't even recommend you get these shipped to you during cold weather because it can cause some issues. So they're a little bit more finicky than a regular acrylic paint, but if you really are a lover of the environment and you're trying to do better, or you're just trying to get a healthier alternative because you have sensitivities to something that's in regular acrylic paint, I do think they're worth a try. Okay, now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We're getting down to our last category, and that is the heavy body acrylic paint. Oftentimes it'll be under the label professional acrylic. These are the thick and chunky acrylics. Now, I have a few colors from Winsor & Newton. I think that I had a set of these at one point, and I either used them up or I donated the colors that I wasn't using as often or the ones that weren't as light fast. And these, oh gosh, I hate the caps on these. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't used this in forever, so I think it's starting to separate a little. You're going to have a thicker consistency with these. If you want impasto, if you want to get impressionistic with your brush strokes and you want good brush strokes, you're going to want heavy body paint. And of course, there's a ton of different acrylic mediums out there. I'm not going to get into that in this video because this is already long enough. But there's gel mediums and different kinds of texture mediums that you can add to your acrylics to get even more modeling paste, for instance, if you want even more of that look. But anyway, so I have some of the Winsor & Newton, not many. I think I probably have a couple more colors than what I'm showing you here, but it's not a line that I invest a ton in. I'm very happy with my other brands of paint, so I just haven't gone this way. These tend to be, from the looks of their swatch on the outside, a little bit more matte. And then I have some of the Holbein. These are beautiful as well. Holbein paint just slaps, I'm telling you. But the really cool thing is I do think these also tend to be a little bit more matte. There's something about the way they formulate their paints, and that makes it really easy to photograph your work after. It just does. Something about their paints, other than the neons, because let me tell you, the neons, I can't even talk. The neons, well, they struggle to show up on camera. You're never going to see a neon the way that you see it in person on camera. But let me show you this. If it does show up properly, it'll burn your retinas out. Now, I use these for like special effects and things like my sketchbooks and things like that. I just love these paints for their existence. You know, neons are not light fast by nature, but that color, it's unreal. It is so fun. But anyway, so I have quite a few of these, and I just want to let you know, these paints naturally tend to seem to have a little bit longer of an open time. Now, I'm not going to sit here and claim that they stay open as long as an actual open acrylic, but I find these stay wet on my palette a lot longer than my other heavy body paints. And that's just exciting to me, because one of my biggest issues with heavy body paints, you'll see, I don't have a lot of heavy body paints. I don't work in the heavy body as often. I think they're beautiful. They create beautiful work. They're obviously very high quality, but I work fast and I still have them drying out too fast on me on my palette. And that's an issue for me because I know I'm moving fast. So I think that some people, when they're first starting with acrylics, they might go out and buy the heavy body paints because they're beautiful, they're professional, they want to have the best, right? But if you are not used to it, or if you're coming from oil, starting with a heavy body paint, well, it may give you the same thickness as oil and those brush strokes like oil, they're going to be drying faster on you than others. However, I don't find that as bad with the Holbein heavy body acrylic paint. I'm very pleased with that. I just have to say that I think that that's one of the best things about their heavy body paints. But they're beautiful. They're high quality to begin with. And I'm not just saying that because I do workshops for them. I wouldn't do workshops for Holbein if I didn't think they had beautiful products. Yeah, they're lovely. You can really get that brush stroke, that evident brush stroke with them. Let me get this dried off. And then again, if you want more of a brush stroke, you can add stuff to them. Same with the rest of the heavy bodies that I will show you. The last one I'm going to show you is going to be, surprise, surprise, golden. Now, I was introduced to the golden heavy body paints when I was in school. My professor loved the golden line. Again, I love golden, obviously. I have a bunch of their stuff. And these are the ones that really made me discover the fact that the heavy body paint dries out faster. Like, when I was in school, we got these as part of you pay studio fees when you go to school. I don't know how it is at other schools, but at my school, you pay studio fees, and some of those studio fees go towards supplies, and they buy you all the same supplies so that you are all on like an even playing field. And he would get us the set of golden acrylics, and they're the heavy body. Again, these are beautiful. If you are working with them just right, it'll look like an oil painting. You won't even necessarily know it's an acrylic painting. However, the studios would be dry. You know, you're all in there, and it was just like, so I had to spray them so often that I got to the point where I'm like, I don't have time for this. So I started bringing in my own paint from home, my Daler-Rowney System 3s and my Liquitex Basics, and in between, when I'd run out, I would get the Winsor & Newton because I found them easier to work with for my style. And again, I work fast. So for them to be drying out that way on the palette, that's my only bummer when it comes to heavy body paint. These are obviously very high quality. I like that these ones kind of dry with that gloss. I love that look. It's beautiful. You have all the light fast ratings, but I do struggle with these more. That's why you see they're not used. I had these in school. They're not used nearly as much as some of my others. I think I used this in school a lot too. But these dried out really fast. And in fact, one year I asked him, I was like, instead of using my studio fees to buy me more of these heavy body, can I put mine towards the golden open acrylics instead for my project? And that's how I got my golden open acrylics. And so, yeah. And again, these will dry, looks wise, they'll dry very similarly to each other. This is a alizarin crimson, and this is quinacridone magenta, but you can kind of see they dry very beautifully and similar. So you get the same high quality look, but a little bit more of that open time. And then I found out that the open kind of stay open a little too long, and my happy medium again ended up being my medium bodied paints. But I digress. So I do have quite a few colors in these. I had 2 sets of them that I got, and then I had bought, I do think I ended up using up the white quite a bit, and I ended up buying extra white. And a few things open stock, maybe, but again, not nearly as much. I do not have a ton of the heavy body paint because I like my medium body, and I love my acrylic inks and my high flow acrylics. Like the inks and the high flow, I just love them so much for detail and things like that, and especially if we're getting into airbrushing. And just for the things that I like to do. But again, you want impasto, you want brush strokes, you're going to want the thicker paint. If you want fine lines and thin layers, you're going to want to get the softer body down to the inks. So if you want to see any videos specifically about any of the paints you've seen here today, please let me know. Again, I do have some videos out already, but if you want me to expand more and you want to see me do more acrylic work, let me know and I will see what I can do for you. Let me just do a little sample of, can I just tell you the anthraquinone blue from Golden? Chef's Kiss, one of my favorite colors of acrylics in any one of their lines. So you can kind of see that. It didn't come out as much as the other one I showed you, but she's got a little dollop, a little alfalfa going on there. All right, so that is my acrylic collection. The next one from this series, I think I'm going to get into my watercolors. That'll be watercolors, gouache, acrylic gouache, and some casein, just because I keep all of those stored together. I don't have room in my acrylic drawer for anything else. So, yeah, we'll be getting into that next time. I don't know when that will be out, but let me know if you'd like to see any videos about these, and yeah. Thank you so much for watching this long one. I hope that you enjoyed it and that you learned a little bit about the different kinds of acrylics I have. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to see a more thorough, specific video about any of the paints that I have mentioned, please just let me know in the comments below. I will see you next time. You have a fantastic day. Bye.